I'm Andrei Gushin. I'm chair of Venture Lab. It's great to see so many people. I just wonder, why don't you come every time? And a few words about Venture Lab. We are a division of MIT Enterprise Forum Northwest, one of the 28 chapters of MIT Enterprise Forum, which was started in 1978 by MIT, of course. And our mission is very simple: to help entrepreneurs succeed, to help all of you to start, fund, and operate profitable company, and to sell it for a lot of money. And please mark your calendar for next Venture Lab, April 5th, how to create a successful business plan for your startup. You know, very important, especially when you're talking to these guys. And we'll have two good speakers, Tom Huseby, Managing Director, Seaport Ventures, and Brian Brewer from Northwest Business Plans. Now it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's moderator, Rebecca Lovell, Chief Business Officer of GeekWire. Right, I'm not done yet. Rebecca has a great experience working with entrepreneurs and angels, and she was managing Alliance of Angels and Northwest Entrepreneurial Network. And last but not least, Rebecca did a wonderful job last year on this panel, so it is a pleasure to welcome her back. Thank you, and hope to see you in April.
I am delighted to be back. This is year 2. We're getting the band back together. We have the leaders of 7 of our area's angel organizations. Before we jump into it, and this is all about you getting to know them, I'd like to learn just a little bit about you and make sure that we sort of calibrate where we are, define terms if we need to. So how many of you have sought angel financing before? Great. Or venture capital? All right, so anybody not know what angel investing is? All right, cool. I think we should be off and running pretty soon here. So this is a really rare treat because, as all of you who have pitched such angel groups know, typically they're timing you and they're evaluating you. We are turning the tables this evening. I have always believed that angel investing in venture capital is a two-way street akin to dating. So you're going to get your first 3-minute date, a little speed dating with each of these 7 groups in just a moment here. But let's kind of zoom out and frame this discussion, if we could, in terms of the angel landscape. So here in the United States, about 600,000 businesses are started every year. Pretty impressive. About 5% of those are angel funded, and that is by the wildest stretch of the imagination. Like, I think that my investment in my brother's bar is probably in that number. And it's true. And then when it comes to venture capital, it's less than half of 1% of all companies that are started. The point is, we're talking about some pretty rarefied air here. It's not every company that's destined for angel financing. And I'm not going to judge you if you decide to take that path or not, but what we really want to do is help you get to know the leaders of all of these groups. So I'm going to, I'm going to quickly introduce them, and usually the Z kind of gets the shaft. So why don't we start with Zeno Society. Let me just quickly introduce Mary Holmes of Zeno Society. She is pinch hitting for Kathy Hatch, who's at another engagement this evening. She powers all the marketing activities of Zeno, and in her spare time, evenings and weekends, loves the water, loves the mountains, and therefore that's where you can find her on weekends here in the Pacific Northwest. And I think you're a native of the region. All right. So you've got 3 minutes to introduce yourself. I will time you. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mary Holmes of the Zeno Society.
So I am Mary Holmes. I have been with Zeno Society for 6 years. And I'm sorry Kathy isn't here tonight because she too has been there for 6 years, actually almost 7, come August. In that almost 7 years, we facilitated $20.4 million. The Zeno Society is kind of unique in the fact that We have investment forums 11 out of 12 months of the year. We do education events, and we also do networking events. And the unique thing about Xeno Society as well is that we do targeted investment forums, and several of you have been there as I look around the room. On March 20th, we will be doing Xeno Entertainment, which is gaming, film, and mobile. And then we go into Xeno Green, which is clean tech. Then Xeno Life, which is medical devices and healthcare IT. In the fall, consumer products and services happens. And then in between, we see everything else. So we started doing these targeted forums back. Our first one was clean tech. And what we found that was really interesting is you reap what you sow. So the first time we did a clean tech investment forum, we saw lots of organics, and you know, it wasn't really clean tech. But once somebody knew that we were into clean tech, guess what happened? Hydrovolts happened. So you really do reap what you sow, and we find that we see new investors and we see new entrepreneurs by doing these targeted forums. The other thing that you may not know about Xeno Society is that we have an annual angel fund, and we give out allocations during those investment forums. So on Tuesday at our last meeting, Thomas Baker got an allocation of $50,000 from the Consumer Products and Services Investment Forum that we had done in the fall. So I did bring calendars. I encourage you to come up, get a calendar for me. I'd love to talk to you about Xeno Society. If you're an entrepreneur, one of the things we really talk about is the first conversation might be your presentation with an entrepreneur, but it's not your last conversation. As you present at Xeno Society, you become a Xeno Society member for the next year. And so all of those interactions, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, are all important in building your business. So that is you know, where you're going to get a referral, where you might get your next key hire, and where you get capital. And so we think that's really important, that it isn't just a one-time dating service, that you're with us for the long time run, because we hope we're there in the first round, and we hope that we're in the last round as well.
Great. Thank you, Mary. All right, so just a couple of public service announcements. In your programs, you should have, and I apologize for this, something that looks a little bit like an eye chart at the doctor's office, but what it is some really valuable data that all of these presenters were good enough to send my way prior to our get-together. So you don't have to worry about taking fast and furious notes in terms of what their investment profile is and how active they've been, the stage of companies that they go after. But these are all important things as you're considering whether or not you're a fit for this angel group and vice versa. One thing that I will call to your attention, and I'd love a little bit of extra context on this, Mary,
Sure.
is I am actually a recovering high school mathlete. So I did some quick math and looked at the difference between what you funded as of 2011, what you funded as of 2010. So it looks like you had a nice year in 2011, putting just under $5 million to work,
Yep.
averaging a little under $200,000 a deal. The other thing I noticed that I didn't see last year, there's the timer, is that you've got, looks like you've got a deal with TAN. Is that the Tacoma Angel Network?
Thank you for mentioning that.
My pleasure.
Oh, a nice plug. So Tacoma Angel Network came to Xeno Society and said, you know what, we really want to work on getting our community together. We don't want to spend the time on deal flow. You see a lot of deal flow throughout the year since we're doing that 11 out of 12 months of the year. We'd like you to screen and coach our deal flow for us. And so we are doing that in cooperation with TAN.
Very good. All right, we'll learn more from you later. Next up, Gary Rittner, whose organization, the Puget Sound Venture Club, will be turning 27 years old this year. It's a great age. Gary, if you don't already know, is a recovering stockbroker, spends a lot of time consulting startups and as well as being a business broker. And when he's not busy herding the cats that are entrepreneurs and investors, he enjoys a good golf game. And we're going to have to get out and do that one of these days. But Gary, why don't you go ahead and take it away and tell this lovely audience about PSVC.
Puget Sound Venture Club was started in 1985. It came from an attorney named John Steele. They were starting around the country, and John said, we need a place for low-tech deals in Seattle. We had about 3 venture firms that were all high-tech oriented. So I called some guys, and so we've been around since '85. Our members, past and present, have invested in over 750 companies. the majority of those were not Puget Sound Venture Club presenters. We get that info because we ask some members to fill out a form at the end of the year, and that represents a little over 100 million. We're pretty wide open. Our sweet spot is probably the product's done and you're looking for marketing money. The procedure is do a phone interview with me, probably 15, 20 minutes. If we both agree, you send out an exec summary. We charge $150 for that. That's the only fee. If you get one person interested, you go to screening on the first Tuesday. If you pass screening, you present at a luncheon on the second Tuesday.
Well under time. 2 minutes to spare. All right, Gary. So looks like both in unmute. We need you to unmute. All right. So, Gary, another good year for Puget Sound Venture Club. I did notice that you did about the same number of deals as last year, although I see that you invested a little less money. So here's what I'd like to know. Are you guys getting cheaper, or are the deals that you're seeing actually more capital efficient? Has there been a shift over the past year? My question is, if we can rate activity in two different ways: the number of deals that you're doing and the amount of money that you're putting to work. So you've been pretty active, about the same level of activity in terms of number of deals, but what I was curious, based on the numbers you shared, as to the average size of the deal. And this might be something that you guys are interested in. At what stage of the company should I be approaching angel investors? What is the range of investments? I can tell you from this whole group, the average deal size, again, trusty mathlete that I am, range from about 130,000 all the way up to 666,000. So that sweet spot tends to be in the $150,000 range, all the way up to companies that are raising as much as $1 or $2 million. So my question for you, Gary, getting back to PSVC now that you're unmuted, is did you see any difference in the kinds of industries, 2010 versus 2011?
No change in the types of industries. Probably the dollar range would be zero, of course, but more realistic. Somebody write a check for 50 grand. So one guy invested in one company.
Yep.
We had 500,000 checks, and that was actually down from the prior year, where we had one guy do a check for $1 million and 2 or 3 checks for about 600,000 or 700,000. So the high end was down.
Sure. So still about 2/3 tech, 1/3 non-tech for you?
We tried. Our goal was to do, as I said earlier, have low tech, but we have a hard time finding low tech. So that is probably not correct.
Okay.
Probably more 3/4, 1/4.
All right. Great. Good info. All right. Next up, yet another pinch hitter. I know Nathan is out of town, but we're delighted to be joined by Lauren Lyon from Keiretsu Forum. He pulls double duty as the CEO of Magic Wheels, as well as heads up the east side of Keiretsu Forum. Thanks for crossing the bridge and joining us tonight. I know that in your 20 years, the last 20 years or so, you spent a lot of time in Asia, and you are brushing up on your Mandarin. So, all right. So please take it away. Tell us a little bit more about K4 here in the Northwest.
Great, thank you. Keiretsu, how many people here know about Keiretsu? Pretty good chunk. Keiretsu is a Japanese word that in essence means collaboration, teamwork. The gist of it is, you know something I don't know, and I know something you don't know. So together, we're a lot stronger than apart. So this is a team of people that collaborate to try to select investments that make sense and make money in the long run. We're the largest angel organization in the world, with 22 chapters all over the world and over 1,000 members. We have raised about somewhere in the north of $300 million in total, and over about 300 companies, something like that. Sweet spots are probably $250 to as much as $2 million is fairly typical, somewhere in that range for us. Our deal flow works this way. We see 50 to 70 companies that apply every month, and we screen about 10 or 15 of those, and 4 every month present. And of those, 2 or 3 get funded. That's kind of how the math works. So 50 or 60% of the companies that present get funded, which is a pretty good statistic. I think it's pretty high. And that speaks to the quality of the screening, at the front end and at the back end. And the due diligence is awfully good. So the teamwork, the Keiretsu, is part of what makes that happen. And we have a lot of fun. It's a great bunch of people. We've got 4 chapters in the Northwest, Portland, Boise, Seattle, and East Side, and I'm the president of the East Side chapter. Typically, at the East Side, we'll see 60 or 70 people typically at a meeting. Similar in Seattle, maybe 30 or 40 in Portland, something like that, and 20 or 30 in Boise. Most of our applicants and presenting companies, a lot of them will go to Northern California as well, so they kind of do a West Coast swing, and they are exposed to as many as 500 investors, so it's a pretty good exposure.
Great. Perfect. All right, so just kind of taking a look at your statistics from this past year, you guys were on fire with $24 million in investments. Hard not to notice that your average deal size is actually the highest, so it's $666,000, nice round number. One thing I noticed that changed from 2010 to 2011 is that 2010, about 10% of your deals were in real estate. 2011, 38% of them were real estate. And I just have to wonder, given the nature of real estate deals, those tend to be a bit more capital intensive.
Right.
Not to put words in your mouth, but do you think that partially explains why such a high average deal size for you?
Partially, yeah. There's great opportunities in real estate in 2011, and we had several companies come to present that are well-known to the organization and have a great track record. So it was pretty easy to make sizable investments in their funds.
Very good, thank you. All right, quick public service announcement as we're going through 7 different groups. You've already heard about Brian Brewer, who's presenting here next month. He has a handy website that will actually give you the screening deadlines and presentation schedules of all of these groups. And that website is
bizplansnw.com.
bizplansnw.com. So check it out if you're kind of planning your fundraising calendar. I think you capture data from every one of the groups represented up here.
Click on Angel Calendar.
Right on. All right. Thank you, Brian. Next up, returning for another round, we have Tom Cadavy.
Very good.
All right. Yes, nailed it.
Get it.
Returning from Wings, the region's group that is really focused solely on the life sciences sector. Delighted to have you back. In addition to being a serial entrepreneur, you really are the gatekeeper, aren't you? You head up the screening committee there in addition to being on the Wings board. So this is a good guy to get to know. Please tell us a little bit more about Wings.
So as Rebecca said, Wings is very much a niche angel organization, and we're fairly new. We're just a couple of years out of the gates. We focus on life sciences, and we define life sciences as therapeutic and diagnostic devices, as well as healthcare IT, healthcare delivery models, and non-regulated biotech research tools. So if you're in that category, you fit with us. We meet 4 times a year. It's a quarterly meeting, or at the Rainier Club. Typically we have 3 to 4 folks present. They've suffered through the screening process, which really isn't all that bad. It starts off with a 1-page description of your deal. We go through those, and you get a yes or no. We'd like to see more. Then you get to do the 6-page deal, and those we categorize and rank. And then finally, you present to the screening committee, which we typically will look at 5 or 6 companies to get to the 3. So we've seen, in the last 2.5 years, I guess, 100 deals come through. 23 of those presented. 7 of those have raised money, and I think we put out about $3 million. So.
Very good. So not all of us are perhaps fluent in life sciences. There's one thing you mentioned that I just wanted to call out a little bit. You mentioned non-regulated therapeutics, and I think many of us have this idea that in life sciences it's going to be 50 million in by phase 2 of clinical trials, and if you're lucky, like a 16-year exit. Can you provide a little bit more color on specifically the kind of deals that you're doing or not doing at Wings?
Yeah, we are very interested in doing deals, obviously, that are good for our angels And something that's going to take 50 or $100 million is not good for our angels. So a lot of our deals are people who are they're actually doing projects as opposed to kind of creating companies, and they're looking for a strategic to take them out in 2 or 3, maybe 4 years based on some very early clinical data. And there is a lot of consolidation that's going on. There are a lot of very hungry strategics out there that are looking for deals, that are looking for products. And so you have to ask the question, does it make sense to build, all the infrastructure of a marketing organization, a sales organization, if it's already there? So that gets our angels a better deal, gets them out earlier. There's a lot less dilution that way.
And again, just to kind of tell you a little bit about the difference between angels and VCs, and I think it's really helpful to know that you are focusing on those angel-friendly, entrepreneur-friendly deals. Very good. All right, thanks. Lars, thanks for joining. Another pinch hitter. Byron McCann couldn't be here tonight, but you literally got off a plane and rushed over here. So Lars Johansson, delighted to have you. This is a real Renaissance man here with a background in both engineering and business. And we're delighted to have him representing the Northwest Energy Angels. So take it away.
Yes, thank you. I co-chair with Byron, Northwest Energy Angels. We're proud to be actually the first group in the U.S. that was focused exclusively on clean tech, on clean technology. We're still one of very few groups, so similar to Wings, but in our case it's clean tech, which you could argue is a pretty broad field as it is. We are 51 members. That doesn't make us the biggest group in town, but we like to think that our entrepreneurs that come and present to us have a very receptive audience, in that all of our members have come to our group out of an interest in clean tech, out of an interest in contributing, doing something good, and hopefully making some good investments in the process, and really appreciate learning from each other. We all come from different backgrounds, but really trying as a group to build up that domain expertise in clean technology. We meet 9 times a year, so every month except for July, August, and December. We typically screen in 3 companies to present, could be 2 or could be 4, but on average it's 3. We also have typically a keynote presenter or a panel, something like this, maybe a little smaller up front, with an educational topic for our members as well as our entrepreneurs. Recently, as years go by, we've also had more and more companies come back and give updates to us. So last week we had 3 new companies present, and we had 2 companies come back and give us an update because they were looking for more money next round. So, and I think you got the stats. Last year we did 10 deals, 8 new deals, and 2 reinvestments for a total of $1.3 million. Again, that doesn't make us the biggest group, but I'm sure we're going to talk about later on how we do collaboration with the groups here in the region. And we also collaborate, as of about a year ago, with a Band of Angels down in the Bay Area. They have a Clean Tech SIG special interest group. So we collaborate with them. They've referred some deals to us that have gotten incremental funding from some of our members, and we've referred some down to them.
Great. So we did see a nice uptick in activity in terms of the deals that you did, and like you mentioned, a couple of follow-on deals in there. I couldn't help but notice that average deal size is about half. And again, it's that question of kind of what's going on out there. Are you getting away from energy production, which almost is more like a real estate deal, and you end up funding a seed crushing operation, whereas some of the clean IT deals, and I feel like that space is really heating up, much more capital efficient. So can you speak to kind of where your average deal size is going and maybe some different industries you're seeing?
Yeah, the total investments in 2010, and these are numbers as best as we know, because we can't force our members to tell us exactly. We go out, like Gary, we go after them and try to figure out how much they invested. But as best as we can tell, 1.9 million in 2010 and 1.3 that we know of in 2011. So not quite a drop in half, but it's very true that
Average deal size, actually, not the money put to work, but the size
okay.
of the deal. Yeah.
I won't argue the math. But it is true that clean tech is often perceived as being extremely capital intensive. That it's going to just take a lot of money to invest in clean tech deals. And it can, if you look at the traditional big solar, wind, biofuels, and so forth. The kinds of deals that we see a lot of are enabling technologies into these areas. So for example, there was a company that got an investment last year that was into the solar market, but it was basically a company that does magnification, something like this that I use because I'm getting old and I can't read menus. But it's basically a magnifying glass, but the optics are sort of not one big glass, but it's many, many, many little slivers plus waveguides. And they're able to magnify that by 5x, so that in a solar panel, they use only a fifth as much PV. The glass, the cover glass, that the manufacturers need anyway. So technologies like that that are enabling, see a lot of things in materials that can be enabling for and also, as you say, clean IT, both because it can be capital efficient and also because other angel groups if they need follow-on investment, are typically much more understanding, experienced in IT than they might be in clean tech. So that's often a good intersection, easier to get funding for than a pure clean tech engineering deal.
All right, folks, we're in the home stretch here. So next up, we do have the president of Seraph with us, Bob Prowant. One more time on the last name. Prowant. All right, Bob Prowant. So her day job, she is the double threat of both an attorney and a CPA, but she's been heading up, that's right, stay on her good side. She's been heading up Seraph over this past year, and we're delighted to have you representing the group. So tell us a little bit more about Seraph Capital.
As Rebecca mentioned, I'm representing Seraph Capital Forum, and Seraph Capital was formed in 1998 as a group of women who came together wanting to look at deals as a group, really. And since that time, Seraph members have invested approximately $30 million in deals, and we hold investor presentations where companies come and present to us about every other month. And we have a screening process, pretty extensive screening process, and our members are involved in that screening process, and then they'll select 6 companies who actually come and do a presentation to the screening committee. And out of that group, then 3 companies are chosen to present to the membership. And following the screening, then we have a coaching committee, also made up of members who are comprised of entrepreneurs, business owners, executives from various companies, people who serve on various boards, have a variety of experience and can kind of bring that to the table, and they get very involved in coaching the entrepreneurs for the presentation to the membership. And we often have been told that that's one of the values that people appreciate and the entrepreneurs appreciate, is that more extensive coaching piece of it. And then the 3 companies come and present to the membership and have an opportunity to have questions with the membership, and then investment decisions are all made individually. So we expect the members to make their own investment decisions. However, in the last couple of years, we've had a lot more of the members coming together and forming an LLC to invest as a group. And again, that's not something that Seraph is sponsoring, if you will, but that the individual investors who are looking to invest in the companies will form and then invest.
All right, so I think this is on. All right, so Barb, I want to throw you a bit of a softball here because I know that sometimes there's confusion in the marketplace. Seraph is an all-women investor group, but tell me, Barb, do you only invest in women-owned companies?
Good question, and one we often get. But no, we have a lot of men who come and present to the group. We're not, while we are a women membership, we do not look strictly at women-owned businesses or even use that as a gauge. We're, like the other groups, looking at a variety of businesses and looking at, what is the business, where are they in their process, what's the product or the service, that kind of thing. So no, we don't restrict it to women-owned businesses.
All right, thanks, Barb. Last but not least, we have Ejane Na joining us from the Alliance of Angels. He's got a long track record in venture and entrepreneurship, and in his spare time, he does enjoy cooking, especially Southeast Asian food. Thank you also for joining us. I know you're under the weather, so let's take it easy on him. Go ahead and tell us a little bit more about the Alliance of Angels.
Yep, thanks, Rebecca. So the Alliance of Angels is made up of about 100 angel investors. Last year, we invested approximately $10 million into about 25 companies. About half of those companies were in the IT sector, and that's mostly enterprise SaaS or social mobile local. A quarter went into consumer, and that is actually mostly like Groupon clones and push commerce, subscription commerce types of things, as well as a little bit of consumer goods. And the remaining quarter is clean tech and a little bit of medical devices. Our median check size comes in the range of a few 100,000. And on the low end, 100K. On the high end, we can fund up to $1 million. We often syndicate with other groups, actually many of the folks right here on the panel together, because we rarely fill out an entire round for particular companies' funding needs. The bare minimum that a company needs to have before coming to the Alliance of Angels, first you need to at least have a prototype of some kind. So it's very hard for us to fund, for example, slides and smart guys and gals. That's just not going to fly. The other thing that we do look for is some measure of market traction. And this is just some evidence, some tangible evidence that you're making something that people want. And it does vary substantially if you are, for example, creating some consumery, freemium mobile thing, and if it's something like that, something in the order of thousands of users growing fast is probably the bare minimum. On the other hand, if you're on the other end of the spectrum, you're creating a medical device or something. Those kinds of companies can be, pre-revenue for 8 years or something like that. So if you're in that particular camp, then maybe some kind of letter of intent from a big pharma company that's interested in a partnership with you or some kind of joint development is probably sufficient. So some minimum market traction is something that we look for. Process-wise, so we run a monthly cycle here at the Alliance. In the first 2 weeks of the month, myself and a couple of my teammates try and meet as many companies as we can. It's usually in the order of 20 to 30. And of this group, we choose 6 companies to present to our screening committee in the 3rd week of a month. And the screening committee is a subset of the Alliance's membership. It's typically our most active and experienced investors. And that subgroup will then take those 6 companies and choose 3 or 4, and these 3 to 4 will then present to the entire Alliance of Angels membership in the 4th week of the month. Typically, on average, at least over the last 2 years, we funded approximately half of the companies that presented at the final member meeting. So if you do get interest, and someone follows up with you, diligence usually takes an order of 2 to 3 months on average. And that's about the time from which you would expect, if diligence works out, a check to land in your bank account. All right.
Great, thank you. And I've got to echo that sentiment. I think, these days, unlike even 2005, demo is the new PowerPoint, right? Just plain good ideas aren't going to get you funding in this environment, no matter how early these guys are getting involved. Before we kind of open it up to the group and do a little more rapid fire, Eugene, do you want to say anything about the Alliance of Angels Fund? I know you put a lot more money to work per deal in the last few years, and if you want to do a little public service announcement on the fund, happy to take that.
Yep, sure thing. So what some angel groups have, so first in general, what some angel groups have around the US is something called the sidecar fund. And this is typically usually a small pool of money. It's in the range of $5 to $10 million typically, that's sometimes raised from the members of the angel group and sometimes raised from outside investors. And the purpose of this sidecar fund is to increase the financial firepower of the angel group. So what it usually does is that when the angel group, for example, decides to invest, say, $200,000 into a particular company, that sidecar fund can invest alongside with the angels. So has that particular case perhaps invest $400,000. And why would this be important? Because for many angels, it's usually, ideally, we want to try and fund a company as far as possible to the point where it becomes, where it either gets to an exit or becomes cash flow positive and doesn't require further investment. Because if the company is very capital hungry and it starts raising money from venture capitalists, they tend to come in with rather restrictive terms, and it actually makes it very hard for both the angels and entrepreneurs to realize a good return, even if there is a substantial, even if it's a good exit afterwards. So it helps us to be able to fund the company further along and hopefully be the only institutional investor within, or the only outside money within the company. And so that hence allows the angels themselves and the entrepreneurs to be able to get a better return at the end of the day.
Great. All right, thank you. So let's establish just a couple of rules of engagement. I really want to make the rest of our evening together as conversational as possible. So panelists, there are 7 of you. Let me suggest this. If you disagree, chime in. If you feel really, really passionately about a question, chime in. Otherwise, we probably don't have time for a lot of dittos, what she said kind of thing. So an audience, in terms of our guidelines for you, many of you may be seeking funding today. Tonight is not the time to do it in front of this audience of 100 people. Firstly, we don't want to violate any SEC regulations. We do have a lawyer on the panel with us. But let's just try to keep the questions, while specific to these panelists and to the topic, germane to the interest of everybody in the room. All right, so real quick, rapid fire. If I were pitching one of your groups tomorrow, and ultimately am successful in getting funding, how long before I see that money in the bank? Anyone? Go.
3 to 4 months.
3 to 4 months from Gary Rittner. What do we have, Lauren?
Probably 3 to 6 months.
3 to
Typically,
6?
we see due diligence take 3 to 6 weeks, and then funding to follow.
Anyone else? Sounds about right?
3 months.
Yeah, I think as I mentioned earlier on, the median for diligence is 2 to 3 months. I think it varies mainly because if it's a situation, for example, like right now there's a company that Lars has actually sent over to me, and they're already in diligence with Lars Group, and there's already a data room and so forth, in which case it'll probably be pretty swift once individuals from my group get involved. So if there's already diligence process in place, there's a deal room, a data room and so forth, it can actually move quite swiftly.
Right. And across all of these groups, it was really fun to see about a 50% increase in all the deals and all the money that you collectively put to work. And that really does jive well with things starting to heat up again on the investment side. I don't have to tell any of you that Seattle really is a hotbed of activity. We've been ranked kind of amongst the 4th in terms of startup density. So there are a lot of you technical startup-y folks out there getting into the game. We're also actually 2nd, at least according to AngelList, in terms of valuations. So this is certainly a far cry from what we were hearing just a few years ago in 2008, when I remember screening some companies in September of 2008, screening very similar companies in October of 2008, who were miraculously, in the course of a month, worth about half what they were in terms of valuation the month before. So speak, if you will, to what you think is the state of the state here in Seattle with startup and investment activity, and specifically any trends you're seeing in valuation. Jump in, any one of you.
Well, I can give a very specific number. So that there's a group, there's the trade association for all angel groups. It's called the Angel Capital Association. They have a website, and they also do various research reports. And they have done a recent valuation survey. I think for 2011, the average pre-money valuation for pre-product, pre-revenue company in the Seattle area was actually 2.6 million. So that's an industry number. It's not any of our numbers. So something just as one particular data point. In terms of trends on valuations, it's true that valuations expectations, let's put it that way, have been going up. And most of it really, I think, has been driven by, again, I guess, bubble-like behavior, mainly down in the valley, where people are getting very excited about certain companies going public and so forth, and they're afraid of missing out the next one. So there are a lot of valuation-insensitive people down in the valley. I would say that even though now I'm getting companies coming in, no product, no revenue, thinking they're worth $20 million, that kind of thing, and actually believing it. The fact is that in terms of deals that actually close, they're actually not that far off the median. So our expectations seem to have gotten a little bit off the rockers in terms of what investors are actually going to invest in actual valuations has not actually moved a lot, at least from the perspective of my group.
Any other perspectives on that?
I think valuations are still pretty tough. That you can chase off investors very quickly with too high of expectations. So reasonable expectations for presenting companies is really important as a starting point, or you can just chase people away.
Right. So setting the right expectations early certainly can set you up for success. The last thing you want to do is raise seed or angel capital on what is later deemed to be too high of a valuation. I think the good news in terms of what's happening in the marketplace is, according to Wilson Sonsini, 73% of the venture-funded deals now, Series A, are actually an up round. So if we're pricing those early and seed stage deals reasonably, you actually will see a step up in valuation should you go ahead and seek your next round with VCs. Gary.
Rebecca, why don't you explain about the second round, and if you're too high on your first round, the second round VCs, you've got a big problem.
Right.
Go
Well,
ahead.
I could talk about that all day, but I won't. But, I think one thing that I certainly recall from my days at Alliance of Angels and now in teaching a class on venture capital investing is that, getting the valuation right is an important piece of the puzzle, but not everything. We could do a 10-hour session on the beauty of term sheets and how those really do affect kind of ultimate returns in a deal, both to investors and to entrepreneurs. But I do remember a couple things that were challenging running angel groups. One is you never want to tell someone their baby's ugly. And secondly, it's really tough but important to help them understand where the market is and what kind of pricing is most likely to get their deal done and how everybody stands to make money at that liquidity event, whether it's an IPO or a merger and acquisition. So seriously, I don't want to jump on that particular soapbox, but if anybody has any other insight kind of on where we are in terms of frothiness and valuations,
I'll comment
chime
on that.
in, please.
Can you hear me? No. Yes. Yes. To expand on this A round, B round. So you do an A round and you're way too high on your valuation, but you find some guys will still invest, or ladies. So you're going to go do the B round. And naturally, you're behind pro forma. I've only seen one pro forma above in my life, and I've been doing it a while. So you're behind pro forma. So the venture guys come in and say, well, okay, fine, we're interested, but your valuation's too high. So the A round guys are going to end up taking the haircut. And that's why you don't want to have a big fat A round valuation. The second reason you don't want, so the A round guys take the haircut, or you founders may end up taking the haircut. So you're having those pricey A rounds is long-term is a non-winner.
All right, why don't we open it up to some Q&A? You guys have been very patient. Jump into the fray. Am I going to just willy-nilly call on people, or go for it?
Yeah,
Douglas.
The timing around the due diligence. I'd like to get a little better understanding of what that looks like.
Okay, so for the cameras and the cheap seats in the back row, the timing on due diligence, can you speak more about that? What's involved?
How long does it take?
So just kidding.
I heard about the timing. I want to know what specifically happens during the due
Oh,
diligence.
yeah. What is all this tire kicking you're doing in the due diligence phase?
Maybe I can kick that off. My mic works. And the reason I wanted to jump on that was that we've actually recently improved our processes around due diligence. And we have, among the different chairs for different areas like screening and marketing, we just established a due diligence chair and a committee to work on that, because I think it's what you hear from most angel groups around the country is that it's very easy to get members to come and listen at the lunch or dinner or whatever meeting you have, but then it's really hard to get that follow-up meeting, and you can spend weeks just trying to get the first follow-up meeting booked. So we had our meeting last Thursday, and on Wednesday we had already pre-scheduled with the 3 presenters that came in this time the first follow-up meeting. So we were at one of our sponsors, Stoll Reeves, here in this building. And the members that were interested knew that that was coming up. They could go straight to that and follow up and then take it from there. And then it depends on what company it is, what people are looking for first. But typically in our case with clean technology, they typically want to learn about the technology, understand how it's has a sustainable advantage to competition, how it's protected, and then go from there into looking at the business model and ultimately into management, et cetera.
Lauren, I know that Wow, that is on. I know that Keiretsu has really codified a pretty extensive due diligence process. Do you want to just maybe add any additional nuance to that?
Sure. It's easy to say all of the above, but it's kind of true. We actually do provide training to our members for due diligence. You can run a company, you can do a lot of things, you can invest in companies and be successful, but not be skilled and understand all the elements of due diligence. So we provide training for all of our members to do that so they can participate and be productive and good at it. But we look at, depends on the company a little bit, but we pretty much check all the boxes. It's technology, IP, go through legal, their financials, forecasts and projections, market, competition, management team. So we don't miss much. We pretty much check all of those boxes. There's a direct correlation, I think, between the preparation for due diligence and the success in raising money and the time frame. Someone asked, how long does it take? One of our recent presenters finished due diligence in 2 weeks. And they finished due diligence in 2 weeks because they were ready. They had it really dialed. It made it extremely easy for the due diligence team to walk through that and just check everything.
Let me just riff on something Tom said there. Lauren, rather. One of the first things that we always did in due diligence was reference checking. So that team component cannot be overlooked. One of the worst things that ever happened, and I will say it was in my tenure, we had a CEO come to us saying, you know, I've done this before. I built another company from, you know, the beginning through to acquisition. First thing we do, we check the reference, and we found somebody who knew him. Was like, oh yeah, that guy worked here for about a month 3 years ago. So don't do that. If I could give you one piece of advice, don't lie. It'll come back to get you. All right, so Tom and then Mary.
Just very, very quickly, I think you know, all angels are not created equally. And as entrepreneurs, you should understand that. Some of them are very capable of leading due diligence, and they will gather their folks together. They've been there, they've done that, they know how to do it, and it will speed up the whole process if you can find within the angel group somebody to lead. And I think that's very, very important because some angels, it's their first meeting, you know, and they're thinking about writing a check, and they're going to be a mess when it comes to due diligence. But somebody who's been there, done that, you know, those are real jewels if you can find them. So,
Mary?
So the angel fund that we have, can you hear me? Okay. So the angel fund that we have goes through a discovery process and a due diligence process, and it's similar to what you've talked about. But one thing that's a little different is we always talk about growing angels' wings, and that is someone who's never made an angel investment. They don't know what due diligence looks like. We pair them with someone who's more of a veteran angel. They go in a team, go through their checklist, and then divide and conquer. I'm sure you do the same thing. And that might be a site visit. That might be sitting down and going through financials. So depending on what that deal looks like, and then looking within the group of angels who are in that fund and looking at their expertise and pairing them off. And then they'll come back with white papers, kind of co-present to each other as they're making that final decision on where that money's going to go.
Yeah. That's a great point, and I can tell you that the Angel Capital Association that Jane mentioned earlier, they do regional meetings every year, and when you go around the room and ask the heads of angel groups, what's the one thing that keeps them up at night? It's lead investors. You know, you get people excited about your deal, and 6 of them sign up to invest, and when you say, all right, who wants to lead? Oftentimes you get a giant step backwards. So it's a non-trivial task to lead the due diligence, negotiate the term sheets, and here to more investor education. I think the region could use a lot of that. Barb, please.
Yeah, one other thing I was just going to mention on, is that working? I don't know. Anyway, I'll speak loud. On due diligence for entrepreneurs is don't ever underestimate the importance of the fact that that is the first look at your company. And the entrepreneur or the investors are going to get a first impression about your company and about your team by looking at the due diligence. So it's extremely important to make sure that you've taken all the steps to make sure that you've got everything in order, your corporate governance, your legal, all of it documented properly, and don't skip any of those steps because that first look is really important.
All righty, Jane, I can see you're itching down there. Jump in.
So one simple practical thing, don't force investors to sign an NDA before going into diligence with you. That's a very common rookie mistake. It makes you look not very smart, and it generally will not engender a good relationship. You're basically telling the investor, I don't trust you. There can be certain exceptions in certain types of industries. I think in some kinds of clean tech, maybe it is necessary to do an NDA if you go into deep diligence, but don't ask that off the bat. A very practical thing too is create a data room. Today you can use things like Dropbox, for example, and put your key documents such as your financials, your cap table, any market research, customer references, partner references, personal references for the team, all the core things, just put them into the data room and then share that Dropbox with all the people who express interest and use that as the kind of the central hub for communication. You'll find that will make your life a lot easier rather than having to email your stuff to a gazillion people and trying to herd cats, just practically.
All right, more questions from the audience. We've got the mic back there, so let's go follow that.
Is it on? No, maybe. We're presently incubating a new product inside of an existing entity, and we've gotten different advice as to whether we should spin off the new entity first into a separate entity, or keep it inside the parent organization and seek money from within the parent organization. So I wondered if you had some advice on that.
Good one.
Well, the Alliance would never fund anything that's still within the parent company, period.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Yeah, yeah. At the end of the day, it's what are you funding? So unless you split off that entity, instead of being 10% of an existing billion-dollar company, angels want to get involved. And I'm speaking for you here, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But at that early stage of an angel deal, they're looking to probably own 20 to 35% of the company, and that is simply not going to happen if you're a small division of a much larger entity. So having a clean cap table, like Jane was talking about, and a really straightforward corporate structure can only help you get your deal done with angel groups.
Just the other issue is commitment. It's just commitment, right? If you're still in a big company, I mean, we want you to be really passionate about building the company. If you're still in the big company, I mean, why, right? So you're not showing commitment if you're not spinning out.
Great. Gary.
Well, can you hear me? The number one rule is hopefully you don't have to go out and get money. I mean, seriously. The last thing you really want to do is go out and hustle up guys like us and try to raise money if you can do it on your own. I'm dead serious. It's a big pain. Seriously, it's. But we would, our group, and I suspect the answer is going to be the same as Eugene said to you. Are you going to be 100% committed to this new spin out, or are you going to be back and forth with your time? And see, stuff like that just doesn't work.
Yeah. One of the scariest things I've ever heard is I couldn't bootstrap, so I'm going to raise VC. I mean, you talk to any of these, right? You talk to any of these angels or VCs, the best deals that get done have done a great job bootstrapping. And they're coming to organizations like these because they're at an inflection point in their business and they need an infusion of cash to grow, not to get off the ground in the first place. So, more questions. Where's the microphone? Here we go.
There's several incubator type of programs, and some of them are targeted for people that are just a founder with an idea, like the Founders Institute, or there's Techstars. Do you guys have you seen an improvement in quality when people go through those programs? Is that like a badge for you guys that makes you take notice if there's someone, particularly if they haven't started a business before?
I think that they're very worthwhile. If you have no or very little background but a good idea, it's a good training ground. It's hard to step in and make all of the mistakes and survive. So getting a little bit of advice in an environment like that could be really helpful.
And full disclosure, so I'm a mentor for Founder Institute and Techstars and an advisor to Startup Weekend, and all three of those organizations are kind of prepping people for entrepreneurship, if not actually creating companies. One of the, I think, interesting value points for Founder Institute is that of the 10 people in the cohort who go through this program, likely only 7 of them will graduate. 3 of them will decide, you know what, I like my paycheck at Microsoft, and I'm going to stick around. So I actually think it's a real service to help people go back to the drawing board or vet them, before they even make that leap and quit that big company and apply for funding with one of these organizations.
A lot of those incubators, certainly in the device business, they'll take you all the way to liquidity. And so, they have engineering resources, they have, initial funds to seed your endeavor. They have connections in the venture capital community, and they'll take you, if you've got a fabulous idea, to $1 billion takeout by Medtronic, which just happened in the Bay Area not so long ago, all in an incubation sort of environment. So
when you look at something like WRF Capital, and they're helping you negotiate the terms of your license with the University of Washington, so from very early commercialization all the way through those really critical partnerships. Great. Good. What else?
So I've got a company, me and my buddies, and we put $50,000 in the company. I'm the CEO, and I've really got some concerns about control of bringing investors in. So could you address the control, what I should be concerned about, and why?
You scared me for a second. I thought you were going to pitch your new business, Tom. Breaking the rules already.
Well, I think that you're going to lose some control. And that's the short version. I think it's really important to not only to get the money, but get the right people. So people that you can get along with and that you can communicate with, that have similar motivations to what you have. If you're driving a company to a liquidity event in 10 years and you've got key investors that want a liquidity event in 3 years, you got a problem. And they can make your life really miserable, and their life becomes really miserable. So that's a key part of that, is matching up not just the dollars, but the personalities and what the goals are.
Right. And I think the best angels, in my experience at least, have this philosophy of noses in, fingers out, meaning they're nosy, they ask you really good questions and provide some guidance and bring some value to your company, maybe open up their Rolodex to you. But at the end of the day, they should not have their fingers in the management pie. It should, at least theoretically, be yours to manage. That said, I think for all of you, it's really important to remember that when it comes to angel investing and on to venture capital, typically these organizations or these investors will own a piece of your business, and there's a control aspect as well. So at such time that a lead investor or an institutional investor gets involved, they may take a seat on your board. So not only do they own a chunk of your business, but they've got some voting power too. Now that might not be the case for the early stage deals for all of these organizations, but that's something that you need to think very carefully about. If you want total ownership and total control, outside investment is not the way to go.
Well, I guess Todd, one thing you could try is that you might want to raise debt capital instead, which would not usually involve giving out control. There are some interesting flavors of debt capital. I saw someone from Lighter Capital in the audience today, some kind of revenue-based financing. So that could be one possible way of doing that. If you did want to raise equity, and your familiar term sheets have equity term sheets have two types of clauses, those that involve economics and those that involve control. And those that involve control, the key ones are usually around board of directors, protected provisions, drag-along rights. So just making sure that you have a package that you're comfortable with within those segments, and be aware of what you're signing. Right.
All right, microphone, here we go.
Just to be clear, that was hypothetical.
Thanks for that. All right, over here.
Thanks for spending your time here.
We can hear you.
Hello.
Okay, you're on.
Thanks for spending your time here. And I had two questions. The first question is, what do you look for in the team profile of the companies? Do you get worried if the team is having only engineers and nobody from the business background, or like vice versa? That's my first question. And second question is more specific. Like in a technology startup, when you define traction, do you have what are your benchmarks for a B2C company?
All right, so question one, what are you looking for in a team? We haven't heard from Lars in a bit, and you are both an engineer and a business guy. So you want to tackle that?
Yeah, we are looking for serial entrepreneurs that have had 2 to 3 successful exits, and they go. How do you start your first company? I think it's really important with the chemistry, and similar to that other question, I think it goes both ways. You should do due diligence and feel comfortable with the investors, much as they should feel comfortable with you. Are these people that you'd like to sit down with when things aren't going so well, and you need to make some tough decisions? But so that really goes to say, if you haven't had all those successful startups behind you already, what does it look to have a successful team? And I've invested in a couple of companies. First company that the entrepreneur, and he didn't have a mic.
There you are. You're back.
It's intermittent.
It was the first company for this entrepreneur, and I'm really looking for entrepreneurs that have, of course, the passion, but also somebody that I see that I can work with, that's coachable, that's sort of a fine balance between very passionate and driven and pushing their ideas, but at the same time being open and listening to advice. Not, again, fingers out, but have that dialogue. I think that's really important. And then about the business and the engineering side, I think I see a lot of things, especially at the university where I also spend some time, where you see lovely technologies and great ideas, but not always the understanding of where would this lovely technology fit in the ecosystem. Because you have invented this great thing, you still need to figure out who's going to pay for this. Where does it fit in? Who do you compete with? Who do you collaborate with? So I think it's very important to have both sides. We had some companies present recently where there was a strong technical side, but a little weaker on the business side. So
yeah, tough to find a solution looking for a problem, right? Barb, jump in on the team front if you could. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing when you're looking at the team, you want to know that, yes, they've got the technology, they've got the infrastructure there to make the product, whatever it is, but you also want to know that they are thinking about how they're going to get that to market. So that includes marketing, sales, all of those other components. We had a company recently come to us, very interesting, no offense, just engineers on their team, couldn't answer the marketing questions, didn't have the business background, and investors are a little bit leery of that. So while it was a great idea, great product, great prototype already, some traction, there was a concern about the team. So I think you do need to be very careful in thinking about the full team and making sure that you've got the various bases covered.
Gary, did you have something to add?
I got a couple of points. Basically, when we see deals with all engineers, we pass. Nothing happens in the world unless you can sell it. I mean, something gets sold and it creates all kinds of activity. And if we don't see somebody on the management team that knows how to sell, we're not interested. And that also brings up, you want to get a sales guy early on in the development of the product. You don't develop a product, you get a production prototype and go find a sales guy. Get him involved earlier, even though it's expensive. And I can sit here and start naming, not a lot, but companies that didn't make it because they developed this great product and didn't know how to sell it. And they didn't recognize they didn't know how to sell it. So I've been doing this, my vocation is I raise money for startups. And so I've done a few deals. I started in the late 70s. And all my failures, and maybe I'm not smart enough to figure this out, but all my failures was not because somebody developed a better product, it's because management team couldn't execute.
Can I just jump in on one thing on diversity of teams? Because this comes up as an investor issue all the time. And it's not just all engineers. That is an issue, as you've heard. But another one is where it's all the same family member. Or they all, I mean, seriously, you see it all the time. Or they don't want to go outside who they know, that close circle, to go get that key hire. They don't want to go outside their circle yet, and that's that whole giving up control. And so you'll see that over and over again. In fact, now that we're 6 years into it, you'll see teams of entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs come back who've learned that lesson and who have built these really strong teams and gotten outside themselves and found partners, in different ways.
I remember Gary asking at a workshop once of one of our investors, do you ever invest in husband-wife deals? And the way he answered, do you remember this? He said, let me put it this way. I've had 3 very successful marriages. Right? Startups are stressful, marriage is stressful.
That wasn't me.
You asked. Somebody else answered.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Can I just add one thing to that? I just want to say that from an entrepreneur side, I think they should have the view that the team is never good enough. Hire really smart people that intimidate you, and the team is never good enough.
Great. Good. We need to follow the microphone here, I think. Brian?
Yes. I'm on here. I have a 2-part question about your opinions about the potential impact of the Entrepreneur Access to Capital Act, which is pending in Congress, and if passed, will open the floodgates to non-accredited investors investing in startup companies. So 2 parts. Number 1, how do you think this will affect your deal flow as angel investors? And number 2, how do you think it'll affect a company that comes to you that's already got a lot of crowdfunding investors?
Barb, that's got you written all over it. Let's have the one lawyer jump in, and then the rest of you can follow.
Well, it is an interesting issue because it does kind of open it up to people who may not be able to, in my opinion, afford to lose their investment, right, and take the risk. And then for the company, what that does is I think the impact it could have is that you're going to have a lot more investors putting in a lot less money. And what that means for the entrepreneur is they've got now, 50 shareholders to deal with as opposed to a smaller number. So I think there could be some issues there. And I'm not sure it's necessarily a good thing.
It almost feels like, to me, it'll be a good business for attorneys. There's
So I should be promoting it?
so it's not all bad. It seems to me that it almost becomes, I ran a public company a number of years ago, and probably 30 or 40% of my time was spent dealing with the public nature of the company and all the shareholders. And so in a privately held company with 10 or 20 shareholders maybe, you don't have that kind of draw on your time and energy away from making the company better. And I could see that with a lot more small shareholders all asking questions. My auntie calling and saying, Lauren, what's going on with the company? And a lot of draw on management. I'm not so sure that it's a great thing.
And a concern that when the deal goes bad, then you've got all of these people.
Lawsuits and
really awkward Thanksgiving
that
conversations.
may not have had the sophistication to be making those investments in the first place.
So I think maybe.
Go ahead.
So a practical. So in general, this particular act will probably be positive for entrepreneurs because it does at a high level have more sources of capital. So, but rather than going to random people and raising capital, there are some marketplaces out there like Kickstarter, which you can approach and use them as a vehicle to reach the other other sources of funding. That's probably a more structured and safer way for you folks out there, rather than trying to hustle up small cats into some giant's house party. Yeah.
I think the whole thing is going to be a disaster, and the reason why is because there's going to be a lot of crooks. I'm serious. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of crooks get involved. Then Congress is going to go the other way eventually, 3 or 4 years from now. And they'll come in with much more restrictive laws than we have now. So.
And that'll be great for the attorneys.
All right, where's the microphone? Please.
So I have a 1-part question. We've talked a lot about money, but one of the things that a lot of angels can bring is domain knowledge. But finding a particular angel who might be a really good domain fit with you, who might be really interested in your project because they understand it more clearly, or they have influence in that area, or they have knowledge in that area. Do you guys have any types of programs where you try to find those kinds of fits as opposed to just general money?
I guess I can jump on that very quickly. The people who come to us very clearly are in the life sciences business, and our angels are spread out across the life sciences business. And if you're interested in doing an ultrasound project, very quickly, the angels that have been in ultrasound companies are going to come and visit you because they understand they can due diligence like that, and that works. So I would very much recommend that if you can find an angel group that's in your domain space, you know, you're that much better off. Or if you can do enough due diligence yourself and find a more general purpose angel group that's full of, you know, IT people, you know, you'll have a much higher percentage of raising money, and it's a better use of your time. So,
as the other sector focused group, I'll jump in on that one too. That's part of the reason why we are sector focused. We want to have people, our members, knowledgeable about the domain, and it's very common that they go in and help either formally with a board seat or informally during the process and after they've invested, help the company along. I'm not having much luck.
You want mine? Yeah.
Your flight was late.
So that's definitely something. And I also wanted to say that we recently added something to, we ask every member at the meeting, of course, to fill out a feedback form, everything they thought about the company that we then feed back to the company. But we also added, just to capture the experience in the room. There may be that a person in the room has great expertise about this, but for one reason or another, they're not interested in the deal. So we're now trying to capture, do you have information that you're willing to share, even if you're not necessarily in this time interested in filling out the deal? And we had 2-3 members do that last time. So.
At Keiretsu, we do try to attract people from a broad base, and we do have different committees for people to be involved in. And I think beyond that, I would say this, that a larger group gives you a better chance of having expertise in that group for your specific area.
So one thing I think Rebecca hasn't mentioned, none of us have mentioned, is that 99% of angel investors are not part of an angel group. So we represent a very, very small selection. Even the largest group has a very small percentage of available angels. So specifically to your question, let's say you want to find someone in a particular domain. A simple way is to go look at, let's say you're building a gaming startup, right? So go look at some gaming companies that recently went public or recently got sold for a nice sum. Go figure out who the executives were or who were the significant founders, and just contact them, find some way to get to them. Everyone's got LinkedIn these days. You can find some way there, maybe through your attorney or someone, and get the introduction. And for many of those people, because maybe they just made a lot of money from that particular domain, gaming, and now you have a new gaming thing, they may more likely to understand you and be sympathetic, and they could potentially form maybe the first tranche of angel capital for your company.
Yeah, it's rare that you'll get so lucky as to find Dan Shapiro, who when he sold his company SparkBuy to Google, he actually put out a blog post saying, hey y'all, I'm in a new tax bracket and I don't like it. Let me write some checks now. That's a pretty amazing opportunity. But I think a lot of the angels I suspect that many of you represent actually really enjoy flying under the radar screen. They don't want to shingle out saying, hey, I'm a millionaire and I really want to give you some of my money. So many of these groups both provide a little bit of that anonymity, certainly as you've heard from every last one of them, a great deal of the screening, and then some domain expertise, particularly amongst the lead angels, such that the others, perhaps some of the other quieter angels, can follow along into that deal. So,
just when we do the targeted investment forums, so we're gaming, mobile, and film, for instance, we reach out to angels outside of Xeno Society to come and visit us. And they may just visit us once a year, and that's okay with us. Because in the end, if the companies get funded, all the angels and all the companies win. So,
all right, where's that microphone?
So, sorry to jump back, but this is back to the crowdsourcing thing again. Some of you have mentioned. I don't mean to jump back to the crowdsourcing, but some of you have mentioned LLCs and was kind of interested in your fund structures and what I can expect in terms of working with you. Am I working with individual angels? Is it pretty seamless, or is it one check, that kind of thing?
Are you asking as you entrepreneur or you lighter capital rep?
Oh, me entrepreneur. What can I expect as you're talking about herding cats and that kind of thing. What can I expect from you guys?
So I mean, the alliance does. So there are two ways in which you could transact with an angel group. Either have a situation where all the individual angels write checks individually to the company, in which case that's what the alliance does. That's pretty much that's our modus operandi. And or like I think it was Serap's case when occasionally they the angels form a special purpose LLC, and the LLC invests in your company. I think the main implication of the LLC from the entrepreneur perspective is primarily around information rights and certain rights in the term sheets, whereby you need to have a minimum share of a company in order to get those rights. And that's the main reason why some angels band together as a LLC to invest in a company in that particular structure. So it's primarily that. It's not obvious to me that beyond that particular niche that there's any major difference between accepting individual checks and getting investment from a LLC that's composed of a bunch of angels.
All right. How about this side of the room? No? Okay. We'll come back.
Rebecca, earlier you just kind of mentioned offhand about a percent ownership that might end up being part of the initial the A exercise. So the question is, let's say we take the average that was mentioned earlier of roughly $500,000 that was given out to a particular company. What is that? What is the percentage of the ownership leveraged against when you've got a balance sheet that's got $50K of some expenses out of pocket and a bunch of intellectual property that hasn't been proven out or whatever? I don't know. How do you get to a number?
That's a great question. So where does this magical pre-money valuation come from? Anyone?
Well,
Gary?
I'm going to comment on that. There's no easy answer with the information you just gave. But I have to expand on that because for some reason there's people out there, you're going to run across somebody that you're going to hire and they're going to want to do a discounted cash flow analysis on a startup. Forget it. Just forget it. Just don't waste your money. And there's no magic formula to this. It just all depends on the deal. And I have to go back to my valuation thing one more time, okay? You can tell this is a big thing with me. I want to give you an example of recent experience. These guys I was invited into a meeting, a couple angels I know invited me in. The company was a 20 million pre, and it was a startup, so it was ridiculous. So I said to these guys, okay, fair enough. Tell you what we'll do. We'll set up a deal where you're going to make a projection, and these investor friends of mine are going to make 10 or 15x, but if they don't, you take the haircut, which means they escrow stock and give it back. Well, they didn't even want to talk about it. And I'm just emphasizing that as another way to do it. If you're adamant on some real high pre-money, then you got to put your money where your mouth is and do a deal like that, where you escrow part of your stock based on a pro forma.
Anyone else? EJ?
Well, I mean, the practical advice to entrepreneurs who not sure where the valuation of their company should come from. So there's really only one appropriate way, and that's comparables. Comparables meaning looking at other companies that are very similar to your own that recently raised money, and that's approximately what you're probably going to get. How you get that number is you ask a trusted angel investor or angel investors who have recently written a lot of checks, tell them what your company does and just a general sense of where you are, and they'll be able to give you a valuation range that will probably be reasonably close to market rate for what it is that you have. That's probably the best and most sensible way to do it. The inappropriate ways to do it are to, for example, just ask your lawyer or ask some, no offense specifically to Barbara. So if, I mean, yeah, I mean, I've had companies come in and say they want the $10 million pre-money, and why? Well, because my lawyer told me that's the number, and I would tell them, well, how many checks has the lawyer written recently? And the answer is probably 0, in which case it doesn't matter. And the other thing is you shouldn't take your valuation estimates from other entrepreneurs who have not actually closed rounds. So for example, your buddy from some other city or another part of Seattle thinks that his consumer photo sharing thing is worth $15 million, but he hasn't actually closed. That's what he wants, so he or she wants, but that's not the correct number to be using. It actually has to be a number that actually closed that. So, I mean, friendly suggestion, go find an angel investor, someone you know who writes checks, a lot of checks preferably, recently, and ask them, what's the range based on what I have?
Yeah.
That's probably the best practical advice I can share.
If Jeff Entris were in the room, he would tell you your company's worth about $2 million. I mean, so I have to echo Gary's sentiment. As much as I teach a class in the MBA program on this very topic, discounted cash flow analysis is not particularly worth the paper it's printed on, because the only thing you know about your revenue projections, they're wrong. They're wrong. You could blow them away, you could miss them, but they're not going to be right. So like Jane said, you're going to look at comparables, and probably two different ways. One, look at current financings. When you read in GeekWire, as I hope you all are, that a company kind of in your space, at your stage, has raised $1 million, you can probably guess, earmuffs everybody over here, you can probably guess that was probably something close to a $2 million pre-money valuation. The way I do that math is that they raise $1 million, they're worth $2 million today, magically their post-money is $3 million, and that class of investors that invested $1 million now owns a third of your company. I'm not saying that it's a solve for X equation. Hey, if I'm raising $1 million, therefore I'm worth $2 million. Doesn't work like that, but you can get a pretty reasonable idea of what's going on in your space based on current financings.
One thing that I use once in a while, according to the deal, is, let's say in 2011 you had some revenue, and 2012 you're getting ready to take off. Sometimes we'll use 2x estimated revenue for the year, sometimes, according to the deal, for evaluation.
All right, who's next? Microphone, and then we'll try to get up here. Great.
One of the things I've been reading about is that if you get rejected the first time, there are two lines of thoughts that I've come across. No right now means no ever, and the second line of thought is no right now. No means no right now. And the other question that I have for you is, if one of you, if we approach you and if you say no, would you be open to giving feedback as to why that no was given rather than just saying no?
So if I heard the first question correctly, there may be a perception that when it comes to pitching to these angel organizations, you get one bite at the apple, right? If you're not ready for prime time and they turn you down, that's it forever. Does any of you want to speak to that perception?
I'll jump right in there. The Wings folks, we have people coming back multiple times, and maybe at 3 or 4 you ought to give it up, but. But a lot depends on who you're competing with. So if we're screening 20 deals and you didn't rise to the top 3 or 4 in that 20 deals, maybe next time you will. And maybe with 3 months of additional time in between, you will have made a milestone, or you'll have added that extra person onto your team that you just didn't have before. So I would encourage, at least for us, to come back. And
Anyone else? Mary?
I would totally agree with that, and I can think of a particular entrepreneur that will remain unnamed who came to us and was in a screening session, had a really incredible product, just really incredible. He was a scientist and could not shift his focus when it came to the financials and the go-to-market strategy. But everyone's in the room going, oh my God, if he says that thing will do what he says it's going to do, oh my God. But just did not have the business acumen to make it happen. So here's a guy that we want so bad to make it happen. But like you said before, great ideas fall on the floor without the person to push them. So it's also making references or referrals to that person to get the help that they need so that they will get back into the system. So no does not mean no. No means please get it together. So we can see you again when you're fully formed.
Great. Lars?
Just 2 quick comments on that. Definitely encourage those that didn't get screened in to come back. Hydrovolts, to their credit. The flight was really early.
Yeah.
Their business changed and pivoted, to their credit. They got screened in and they got funding. Another company that got screened in didn't get funding, one-wheeled electric motorcycle.
Yeah.
But now, for some reason they didn't get funding the first time. Actually, now they have a lot of traction. Police, others are really interested in this, and we allow them to come back and give updates, even if, as long as they present it to us, they're welcome to.
And then, yeah, please.
Sometimes no does mean no. But you really need to ask honestly to the group, and I would ask that question. So if you're told no, you didn't make it, will you tell me why? And I really want to know why. Don't give me the polite answer.
How many of you have
you're
used,
likely to get the correct answer.
right? How many of you have said, "Come back when you get more traction"? Has anybody heard that? We want to see some traction. I think it's really tough. For every company, every industry, the answer is going to be different. The best way I heard this described, actually, for myself, was Michelle Goldberg at Ignition. And she said, I can't give you a number of what critical mass or traction means. What she gets really excited about is companies that demonstrate some velocity. Something's happening in the marketplace, and they start to take off. And I'm guessing that that kind of thing excites all of you as well. All right, who's next? Great. And back?
What are angels seeing as far as a return?
Angel returns.
Well, they obviously, on startups, 10x is a rule of thumb. They need to see 10x potential because of offset their losers. And I want somebody to jump in on this, I can't remember. Rob Wiltbank, UW professor at Willamette, has got this presentation. I can't remember the numbers. Have you guys seen it?
27% IRR. It's
What is it?
Same IRR for angels as it is for VCs.
But he's done the results, and it was not 10 times, was it?
Certainly not. So
It
for
was
those of
20
you,
I think it was 20% IRR.
Yeah,
was
20%.
20%.
yeah, if you're doing well. I mean, I think what you're saying there.
And a 10x, by the way, is in 5 years is about a 47% IRR.
Right. So what you see here is sort of a bell curve. If you do 10 deals and you kind of diversify your portfolio, you're just killing it if one of them is that home run. And you're going to see a bell curve where, a few of them are your doubles and your triples, and many of them are just going to peter out and strike out and be the walking dead. But like Gary said, those winners have to cover your bets. So the way I think that whether you're an angel or a VC, you're looking at a world in which there's a possibility that this deal could return 10 times my cash in 3 or 5 or 7 years. That world has to exist. It's most likely not going to happen. For VCs, kind of same thing, except that world looks more like there's got to be a several $100 million exit possibility or an IPO. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense for VC returns. Same thing, though, bell curve, right? The winners kind of cover the losers.
A simple way to look at that is if only 1 in 5 investments pay off, so the one has to pay for the others. So how much? Well, 5x means you break even. So 10x is a good target.
On that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything about my company, but you can sing karaoke here. No, 52% of the investments fail within the first 2 years. So that's something that the crowd does need to hear.
Thanks for bringing us all down, Todd. All right. So
the good side of that is Rob Wiltbank again said, or maybe it wasn't Rob. He said lemons rot faster than plums ripen, or maybe it was Bill Payne.
That's a good one. All right, who's next? All right, going without Mike, acapella here. Okay. Great.
The valuation. Oh, these don't work anyway. Is it working? Okay. The valuation is not based on the pro formas, and we agree that the pro formas will all be wrong. So, what are you looking for in the pro formas?
Fair point.
So 2 things.
Why do you want to see those projections?
So it's 2 things, right? So first, we don't really care exactly what the numbers are, but they tell us 2 important things. The first is, can the person make reasonable assumptions? And second, can the person does the person know how to plan how a business scales out? I mean, just for example, recently I had a company come in, and they had this financial plan which basically suggested they're going to grow their employee base from like 2 to 80 within 1 year. And over the course of that, and I looked at the rest, and their revenue was roughly flat. Their cost around. I mean, when I see something like that, what it tells me is that once we invest in this guy and we go on the board, this is going to be a CEO that's going to be missing numbers, that's going to be causing all kinds of trouble. I'm going to have to do a CEO search very quickly. I mean, it's all kinds of red flags. So that's kind of what we look at, sensible assumptions and good graphs on how to plan and how to scale.
It's really good if there's a hockey stick.
And very unusual, too.
Yeah, these don't work. Yeah.
But if the market is big enough that that pro forma can at least make some sense.
Returning to the question on the team structure, to what extent, when you find a gap in a team, do you arrange a marriage or a shotgun deal or identify people, and where do you draw those from?
Well, I kind of jump on that. I hate those kinds of things. You know, I'd much rather have the entrepreneur go out and find his or her own partner, because those arranged marriages, you know, I've never seen one really work very well.
They're loveless.
They are loveless. That's exactly right.
Talking about investing, right?
Yeah, we are. And so I would highly encourage you, if somebody says you have a hole in your team, to try and fill that yourself.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Although I have to say, I think if this is striking fear in the masses, one of the most standard and important use of proceeds is your next key hire. You rarely, if ever, see a complete team at the angel deal stage. And, you know, much like Ejane said about having financial projections that show your critical thinking and your assumptions, you need to demonstrate some self-awareness around what you're missing. And I think that that is a really important indicator of a coachable and successful entrepreneur. So, you know, in a perfect world, you would have already hired that VP of channel development. Next best is you know, having a couple of candidates in the hopper, that one of whom you can bring on as soon as you get funding. Barring that, maybe you've at least crafted a really thoughtful position profile for what skills that VP of channel development needs. But at the very least, know what you're missing. You know, that self-awareness is a big deal.
Yeah, that gets back to, can you hear me? That gets back to know what you don't know, which is always something you look for in a good CEO. Another thing, I'm getting off subject, but another thing is a good CEO recognizes his mistakes early. And, you know, a guy that can do that, you know, that's an unusual talent. But back to your question, one of our due diligence questions on our checklist is, after you raise this money, who's the first person you're going to hire? And boy, you learn a lot from that question. If there's no sales guys and he doesn't say the VP of sales, I've had stuff like, I'm going to hire a secretary, I'm going to hire a receptionist, you know, I'm going to hire a part-time, and I'm drawing a blank on what I want to say because I had a great one, part-time something. But the point is, and it's really a good question.
Let's take a couple more questions from the audience, and then I want to make sure that we do some rapid fire.
Here's a couple questions for the panel. What percentage of your most recent deals have you put into entities that were structured as LLCs? And then the second part of that question would be, what deals have you done recently that were structured as convertible debt?
Okay, so corporate entity, LLC versus C Corp. Anyone? Bueller? Anyone investing in LLCs up here?
I don't think we've seen any investments in LLCs, but it's very easy to convert an LLC to a C Corp. Convertible debt, people have different views on that. Some people really don't want to do it. We've had several companies get investments on a convertible debt. I think the key thing with convertible debt is to see that the round that this convertible debt is going to go into, the qualifying financing that it'll convert into, is imminent. They actually have some traction. What? Is it my accent?
Let's try something.
It's got a Swedish filter on. But if you can realistically think that there is actually that round is actually gonna happen, and you have reasonable terms for that bridge loan, then we've certainly seen entrepreneurs get funding for it.
Yeah, nobody likes the bridge to nowhere. I think that's the fear of the convertible note.
I think at Keiretsu we have syndicated some deals. I think it's a relatively small percentage of deals, Generally, because they're syndicated deals, they're larger dollars. But it's a small percentage, I think, overall.
Good. And I think we only saw one convertible debt last year of those 27.
I'm just going to comment, the convertible debt should have a cap on it. And you know what I mean by a cap. We don't have time to go into that.
I want to know, what's the best way to connect with you? Do you need to be referred in, or are there ways to connect through Gust? What do you
Well, you don't need to do that anymore. NWEnergyAngels.com, and there's a link from there that says apply to us. It's always better, of course, if you know somebody, so feel free to give me your card.
Same at Keiretsu. You can go online and apply, but if you know someone, it helps.
Same.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. Over here? Oh, there we go.
I guess coming up from the valley, as it were, there's a big movement there about basically disregarding business plans. First company I started, they basically said, show me a model, not a plan, and kind of operating under the ability to pivot and move and have a visual representation of what that is. I'm wondering how that's represented up here and what your positioning is to getting a model versus a plan.
Well, I'm going to give you my quickie on that one. You know, I just don't believe that one. I can read a business plan, and I'm not saying this is an absolute by any means, but I can read a plan, and I'm going to know a little bit about that guy's, the CEO's personality, just reading the plan. Not, you know, some. I won't say obviously not all, but I don't buy into that thing at all. I don't know where that came from.
We actually had a company come up from the Bay Area. They applied to us, and we require a business plan, executive summary, and a PowerPoint is typically what you want to submit. And they had the PowerPoint and they had the summary, but not a business plan, because they said, we haven't needed that for the other money we raised. And granted, I mostly skimmed through the PowerPoints and learned a lot from that, but we had them make a sort of semi-long business plan, and lo and behold, they got funding.
Well, the Alliance doesn't require a business plan, so we ask for an investor deck, pretty much, and that's more than sufficient.
Or executive summary and PowerPoint.
Yeah, in an era where people communicate via 140-character messages, you know, certainly, and perhaps some of the angel groups are a little bit more diligent than others, but if 99% of the angels out there aren't members of groups and they're consuming tweets and PowerPoint decks, I think that's where a bit of that trend is coming from, to answer Gary's point.
I think, once again, the completeness of your preparation matters a great deal about how long it takes to be funded and what are the odds you're going to be funded. So you don't have a business plan, it requires more due diligence to figure out what you're doing. And it also says something about your logic.
You wouldn't get past, they wouldn't get in the door without a plan with us.
Right.
I mean, I'm not trying to be sarcastic, but that's the bottom line. When we have screening, we say, bring a copy of our business plan, because I have not looked at it on my Puget Sound Venture Club hat. I mean, obviously I've talked to them, read their exec summary. And we had maybe 3 months ago, 4 months ago, where's your business plan? We don't have one. They didn't pass screening. So, you know,
Although I
so you're
think
getting different answers up here, I realize.
you will.
that.
There's something to be said for brevity, and I know this is one of Brian's favorite quotes from Mark Twain, which is, I didn't have time to write you a short letter, so I wrote a long one. It really is challenging to boil your business down to a 10-minute pitch deck or a 2-page executive summary. But if you can't communicate that kind of thing with clarity and brevity and all the planning and thought behind it, I don't care if it's a tweet or a deck or 2 pages or a 20-page business plan. I think it's really the quality of thinking and your ability to convey that with brevity.
If I could just echo Rebecca's sentiment, you know, I write business plans and coach a lot of entrepreneurs. And what's really important is the thinking that goes in the business plan. It's not so much the document itself or the format, but it's the thinking. That's what these folks up here are going to be looking for, just like Rebecca said. So just a quick pitch. Next month, I'm going to be on the panel talking about business plans, and that's what we're going to focus on, not whether you need one or not, but what's important to go into your thinking about a business plan.
All right, can we do one more burning question from the audience? Make it really good, no pressure. Maybe 2, and then we'll get back to the panel for closing remarks.
So of those companies that make it to the final presentation stage with you guys, what are some of the typical reasons why
those that fall out, whether or not they're common or are they circumstantial as it relates to your pool in that cycle? What are the kinds of reasons why they drop?
Tom?
I can jump on. It just never ceases to amaze me how people will come in, they'll have actually a really great idea, you know, they might have a pretty decent team, and they can't communicate. It's over and over again. They'll come in and their deck is sloppy. They can't get the idea across. People just, their eyes just roll back. And you know, it takes some time to really work that thing through and make sure that you're communicating. I don't say you have to be a Steve Jobs or anything, but you need to communicate your idea quickly in those 10 things, 10 slides, and do a good job of that, because you can have the greatest idea on the planet. You can be very senior, and you know, the young guy with the great deck is going to blow you out of the water. So.
And the flip side of that is they have a great deck, bloom, you're just amazed. And then you peel back some of the onions, get into that due diligence, and you find it's really a house of cards, that they really don't have that team. It was a bunch of people put on the piece of paper that was the team. It was one guy's idea and doesn't have the power to get it off the ground.
I think the biggest reason people fall out is fundamentally there's something not solid in what they're trying to do. So, and it shows up in their presentation and the due diligence. The reason they fall out is there's something wrong. And all of these groups are good at what they do, and they find it out.
Good. All right, last.
You know,
yeah?
Go ahead. Mine's not important. Go ahead.
You'll get your chance. All right, last audience question.
I'm incubating a product, and I'm having trouble connecting the value delivery with the product itself, because the product is kind of like a new nut and bolt, and like it might enable this incredible value at the end of the product, you know, at the end of the product, but it wouldn't, it's hard to describe in this very small, like, oh, you can tighten it that much, you know, 10% more torque with 10% less material or something like that. And it's hard to sell that sizzle at that sort of like small, tiny part of the manufacturing process. But, you know, if you make a better nut and a bolt, that's, you know, $1 billion market. It's just hard for me to figure out how to pitch it.
We need to talk.
Yeah, I guess along those lines, for all of you in the room, and I know there's a number of engineers in the audience and on the panel, there can be a temptation towards perfectionism. And, you know, I just know I've got to really develop the most elegant piece of software or just the best, you know, nut and bolt solution ever. But in my experience, there's no such thing as feature complete until you get somebody using it. Talk to customers. So make sure that you're talking to even a small closed beta of people who could theoretically use it. If you can express the benefit in terms of return on investment, how much money they'll save over time, versus describing the features of the product, I think there's more than a semantic difference between features and benefits. So think about what pain is it solving? How much money are they saving? But for all of you, don't forget about the customer. If you've got a wonderful product and no market for it, you're a science experiment, not a business. So with that, can we just from the panel, with the short few moments we have left, I would love your one piece of advice, inspirational perhaps, to this audience as they're considering seeking angel funding, entering on this entrepreneurial adventure. What advice do you have? Why don't we start from the middle and kind of fan out here? Lars.
Oh, wait. I was just thinking, what?
If the Swedish filter is working.
If you're passionate about it, go ahead and do it, and build a stronger team than you're comfortable with.
Nice. Great. Barb?
Yeah, I'd say make sure at the beginning you're covering your bases and you're not cutting corners in putting things together the right way, because that will come out in the due diligence process if you've tried to kind of cut those corners.
Jane?
I think when you're kind of starting out and trying to decide what exactly it is that you want to do, what kind of company you want to build, it is a lot more helpful to take a careful look at your own, your and your team's core skill set and what unique things that you bring. and also perhaps look back at some of the jobs you may have held in the past and companies, and were there some problems, some issues that they face that you're intimately familiar with because their job and you feel that you can solve? Those are probably some of the best ways, the best ideas from which entrepreneurs can build great companies from. I guess the converse is that the wrong way of doing it is to try and identify hot trends or try and see what appears to be cool and sexy in the moment and feel that, well, I'm just kind of do that cool thing. Those are usually result in unhappy outcomes for entrepreneurs.
Mary?
Building a company is a team sport. Get a good team.
Nice. All right, Gary.
Make sure you know what you don't know.
Lauren?
I think you need a clear vision of where you're going. So what do you want to accomplish? If you're the founder of the company, what do you want to accomplish? What's your end goal? Is it money? Is it the experience? Is it doing something good for the world? And whatever that is for you, be clear about that and share that with your key team. And make sure your choices about your investors and what you're doing with your company line up with that. Otherwise, you could wind up in a spot that you didn't want to be in.
All right, take us home here. Tom?
Don't quit your day job too soon. Seriously, get it as far as you possibly can with that day job before you make the big dive, so that you're in position to show that prototype, show that plan. You've got the team, and then you go into negative cash flow mode and get it as far as you can before you give that up.
Right. Well, lots of pearls of wisdom here this evening, ladies and gentlemen. I heard lots of themes emerging, including one around team. I think that every single one of you spoke pretty passionately about the importance of team. And I do have a recovering attorney friend, Eric Custer, who always liked to say, I've got a million ideas, and I'll sell you any one of them for $5. The point being, it's all about execution. So keep doing what you're doing. Hope that you got to know these 7 fine panelists this evening and get to know them better by applying to their organizations as you see fit. Have a wonderful evening, and I hope to see you at next week's GeekWire Summit, where we are celebrating our first birthday with a half-day conference and, of course, a party to follow. Come see me if you want a special discount for those of you who attended this evening's session. I want to thank MIT Enterprise Forum for bringing me back for round 2, all of you for changing plans, catching planes, crossing bridges, pinch hitting, and just being great sports up here. Please join me in thanking all of the panelists.